Mayor Troxell from Fort Collins, Colorado. Truly one of my favorite mayors in the country. I was elected in April 2015, re-elected in 2017, second term as mayor. Mayor Troxell is on the faculty and was the associate department head, mechanical engineering at Colorado State University. So he's a professor and a mayor. He has his BS, MS, and PhD degrees in engineering from CSU. He's been on the faculty of the Department of Mechanical Engineering since 1985. He is an internationally recognized expert in the areas of intelligent robotics and intelligent control of distributed infrastructure systems. His smart grid research has focused on intelligent systems and the integration of the distributed energy resources, including renewable energy and storage, into the electric power grid. So it's my pleasure to introduce Mayor Wade Troxell.
Thanks for the introduction. Well, it's a real honor for me to be here and to join you and Mayor Gray and Mayor Beitler and to be here. Great honor. How many of you are faculty? So I'm on the faculty at Colorado State University, as Scott pointed out, in mechanical engineering, and I've been on the faculty for quite a while. And also, I think my story helps to tell Fort Collins' story. So my father was also on the faculty at Colorado State University since 1947. And CSU is a land-grant university, and when I was born, Fort Collins was 20,000 people, and the university was roughly about 5,000. Now it's 167,000 people and 35,000. So as was pointed out in the earlier presentation, Fort Collins has had steady growth over that time. And it's a wonderful place in so many ways. And for me today, I just want to share some of those things that tell you about literally my hometown. My hometown, where I'm fortunate to raise my family and have my kids, but also I was able to grow up and to see the kinds of things and the decisions that were made when I was growing up. And one of the things that this personal story brings is kind of this long-term view of the legacy that we're building upon, looking towards the future of our communities together. And I think that's so important to, I think, university cities, because this quote that's been put up already, we're in our 147th year of this journey to a great city. And so how are we leveraging that in a way that even makes our city an even greater place? So I talked about the steady growth and the natural beauty's been pointed out, and some of the decisions that were made, by legacy folks in our community. We have wide streets because they were turning wagons around. So when Fort Collins was founded in 1864, Colorado State University was founded in 1870, and the state of Colorado, the centennial state, was 1876. So all those things, so from the very beginning, Colorado State University, then it was Colorado Agricultural College, and Fort Collins were literally joined at the hip. And so the industry was as well. And so that's an important aspect, I think, that to understand in the past in your community. And coupling that legacy is an important part. So I mentioned the wide streets and the founding of CSU. It's Fort Collins. It was never actually a fort. It was a camp along the Cache-la-Poudre River, and then we were close to the Overland Trail. And so that's part of the, and there was French fur traders, but also a lot of influence from Spain and Mexico as well. So you see a lot of those influences in our area. We have a council manager form of government. As a city, we became a home rule city in 57. And with council manager, there's 7 council members and the mayor. And the mayor is directly elected. And I work closely with our city manager. In looking at this particular picture and thinking about our community, you see, so we have a good urban center that's located along the Cashlaputa River. That was pointed out, the transportation system. We have a train right through the middle of our community, and that creates some of the challenges that we have today. That was economic development 100 years ago, was providing the right-of-way and the access through the on the streets. And you can see that we have an old power plant that's been repurposed in the 1990s as our Energy Institute now. And it's very much part of the collaboration and the partnership between the university and the city. And to the right, you can see a new football stadium. And this is interesting too. And I know you've had some challenges with the Rupp Arena and being a municipal owned and the relationship there. This was very controversial because we had another football stadium that was located next to our foothills. And we're just right along the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. And it was 3 miles out of town. And so our current president, Tony Frank, who sends his regards, would like to be here, really went out on a limb and built a whole new stadium. They've had 2 games so far, so it opened this season. And it became very controversial in our community because if you can imagine developing a whole new infrastructure that would seat 40,000 people and putting it in the urban center where there wasn't the infrastructure, parking, transportation, other sorts of things to support it. And so that's in part of the story today is the collaboration with the university and the city and our businesses. I put up this slide because I use this a lot to think about our partnerships around the Triple Helix. And this is one of the assets that we all can build upon. I look back at the Durham-Raleigh partnership and their history in the late 50s with being a lot of anybody of any talent left. It was poor. The tobacco farming industry was in decline and things like that. They came together around the Research Triangle Partnership, and that is now very legendary, how it's really created that area in terms of medical, information technology, and other areas, a dynamic area. And I've always looked to that as a model, a way of thinking about integrating the Triple Helix, public sector, private sector, research university. And research university is important, and Colorado State University does $340 million a year in contract and grant research. I'm a former research dean, so for the College of Engineering, so those things are very important, but also I was very active in economic development in our community and in Colorado as it relates to the research university. And that dynamic is a very important one, as well as was pointed out in our keynote. And so the Triple Helix model, and the idea with the Triple Helix is that getting alignment, each one of the strands has a fundamentally different mission and how it's financed and that sort of thing. And if you can get alignment between the public sector, private sector, research university, you can literally leverage in ways that I think are profound. And so one of the ways we think about and we talk about our city is city as a platform. You know, with a sharing economy, we talk a lot about platforms, whether it's an Uber or B&B, Airbnb, or and so thinking of the city as a platform. We build a street, and that's a platform for businesses to be located along the street to create commerce. And so when you begin to broaden that notion of a city as a platform, it becomes a platform for a lot of things. And when you think about everyone in your community as an active participant in your community as a co-creator in one way or another, it doesn't have to be, you know, major things, it can be the small things as well. But it's a dynamic, it's an organism, and thinking about city as a platform, everyone is a co-creator in your community, and this is some of the language that we use and think about in our community, about our community. So what it does is drives kinds of conversations around when we talk about our climate and climate economy. That's a strategy that where we create not just jobs, we create wealth and industries that really are pointed towards the future. When we talk about our economic health strategies, we basically, it's incubate, grow, expand, and attract. And attract is last for a reason. We don't buy companies, for example. We create desirable places to live and be successful in terms of live, work, play, research, and do what you do. And so we invest in that infrastructure, and other things, the good things follow. And so that's an important dynamic as we think about economic health within our community. And it's expanding beyond the climate economy. We have a music district where it's intentionally, purposely building music as a business, but more than that, it's part of the fabric of the community in ways, as we talked about. It's simply not the cultural things that might exist on campus or in our Lincoln Center in city, but it's really creating more of a dynamic. And if there's one thing that comes from my research is thinking, is really the systems thinking and this integration and this dynamic of these cities as organisms, and how do you create this vibrancy, this thriving kind of community. So city as a platform is an important part. And to the upper right there, it's an exhibit, and here it is shown that at the Smithsonian, at the U.S. Museum of American History, in a 5-year run right now. It's an exhibit for places of invention, and it features Fort Collins in the 2010s going forward as it relates to clean and a greener planet. And just to talk about the exhibit briefly, it describes 6 cities. 5 are in the past: Hartford, Connecticut in the 1880s, Hollywood in the 1930s, Silicon Valley in the 1960s, Minneapolis in the 1960s, Bronx in the 1990s around music, and then Fort Collins is in the 2010s going forward. And the story that is described in the exhibit is one about collaboration and partnerships and creating an environment for success around economic development and thriving. And so that's an important part, because that's intentional within our community, is this, and when you talk to people, people say Fort Collins is friendly, engaging, people reach out for one another, it's a very giving community, and it goes to the metrics that Scott pointed out earlier, that those begin to underpin the kinds of things that we know about our communities. And so a place of invention is an example of the part of our community. Some of the challenges that we have, and we've talked about some of this already, we have transportation issues with traffic. As you can imagine, steady growth, one of our interstate, our governor in the 1970s, we were to have the Olympics in 1976. And we turned them away. And a lot of the money that would have probably built infrastructure in terms of our highways has never materialized since. And so we have a lot of challenges with our interstates and our connectivity. And so that's one of our challenges, is with transportation. Affordable housing is another one. But in a relative sense, we're still very affordable. But as it continues to go up, it makes it less affordable for those that continue to live in our community, and students and that sort of thing. So that becomes more of an intentional part. And I mentioned the stadium as turning a challenge into truly an opportunity. I think most people view having a venue of 40,000 as a good thing, and it truly is, and it's proving out to be that as well. But when it was controversial within our community, working together, the university and the city, the university has maintained every promise that was provided during those kinds of discussions. More than $20 million from the university has improved the public infrastructure in the city's right-of-way. And so, for example, 2 tunnels that have increased and improved our multimodal transportation to the university, that has reduced a lot of the, improved the safety and things like that have gone on as part of this partnership. And so it's really an important part of the message of the University City is the relationship. It's simply not, and this is where I think the word University City is important and different than town gown or different college town or different muni kinds of discussions, but it really lists the opportunity and the alignment and the leveraging beyond just the what would, I think, get to the mundane thing that every university city has is, there might be student housing issues, there might be parties, there might be, to me, that's kind of that marginalizes when you talk about town gown, I think, the leveraging opportunity. University City, I think, lifts it to a much higher level related to the data that underpins what makes University City such a special place. And so why and how is Fort Collins such a special place? Well, we talked about the beauty. Just some underpinning, I think, things that is a hallmark of Fort Collins is great planning. We talk about our city as being a plan and do city. Some cities plan but don't do, some cities do but don't plan. And so by combining those two intentionally, so we have a very comprehensive city planning process that when you're there, you appreciate there's this coherence of the sense of place throughout the community. In that regard, there's decisions that were made, and this is the legacy element that you need to, that we all need to appreciate. Decisions made in the 1960s when I was a young boy, and actually I went to city council meetings on junior high. My father was on city council too, and actually I was mayor when I was 14 for a day, where I represented the mayor. But it made me aware of things then than how they've played out today. And one of those is undergrounding of our electric power system. A decision was made in 1960 to do that. That's a very difficult decision from the standpoint of ROI and well, it's not that bad, and that sort of thing. And one of those things that people don't necessarily see because they can't see it, but fully appreciate, is that the underground electric system. So all the view sheds are clean. And so that adds to the community in ways that, and that was a hard decision made many years ago. Another one that, in our town with 22 breweries and a couple of them national now, is that we were a dry town until 1969. And so I point that out to people as well in terms of it, from 1895 to 1969, we were a dry town. And now with national breweries as a part of our community, that's an important part. We have world-class companies like Woodward, Avago, NVIDIA, Intel, HP, and as well as New Belgium Brewing and others. And so we have a high-tech, we have a vibrant, as I mentioned, music, but arts and culture, and all of it is intertwined with the university, which is actually where the symphony started in partnership with the city back in 1949. And so with that, I just, on the graphs that you've seen earlier, but I just want to point out, and then this becomes a metric of how we follow our city. And so you can see Fort Collins called out on the various dimensions of the data as it relates to, being a university city. And so with that, I thank you all, and I'll turn back to Chris, or Scott, for introducing Chris. Thank you so much.